The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Patrick Cristiano, your host, the publisher of TheaterLife.com, a website for theater buffs in New York City and the Hamptons. And we're coming to you from the LTV studio in Wainscott, where I have a special guest today, a theater producer, Riki Kane Larimer. Riki, welcome.
Thank you. I'm busy looking at you. I'm
Watching
learning
it.
about your show. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here,
Thank you so much
Patrick.
for coming and taking time to do that.
Absolutely.
Because you were on once before, and I wanted to have you back anyway. Now you've got some really cool things cooking.
Oh, yay. I do. Well,
So we're going to talk today, number one, about your transition from, what is it, corkscrew you made? Was it
the rabbit corkscrew.
The
I was in the housewares business.
What's it called?
It was called the Rabbit
Rabbit.
Corkscrew, and then we had a second brand called Houdini, which was for the big box retailers, you know, big retailers like Walmart and Target and Kohl's. And it was a wonderful 30 years, and we had a great time doing it, and sold the company at just the right time in November of 2013. And about a year later, I got involved with the York Theater Company, and because
Which changed your life.
which did change my life,
It certainly did,
and that's
didn't it?
where I was exposed to Cagney. I just fell in love with that show. The York Theater Company is on 54th and Lexington, and I live on 51st, all the way east. So
And the York Theater Company only develops musicals, original musicals, by the
only
way, for
develops
people that don't know
musicals.
that.
And so my late husband had been a composer and a writer, and he was involved with the York, and then I sort of took over for him after, and it was
So you went to the York before, when I didn't know that. I
went
thought-
to the York, yeah, we were involved with the York, but then I was asked to serve on the board, and I was hesitant, but I am so glad that I accepted that invitation to serve on the board, because I really love the work that the York does, and Jim Morgan is a terrific artistic director.
They're fabulous.
And you know, it's a neighborhood theater. It's not, you know, big like Roundabout or Manhattan Theater Club or the Public. I mean, those guys don't need me to be on the board. They have plenty of support and a lot of patronage. But I feel, I'm on two boards actually. I'm on the York in
And the
New
Bay
York
Street.
City and Bay Street out
Yes.
here. And I'm just really very proud of the work that we both of them do. And I feel lucky to be, you know, important. It's like being a big fish in a little pond, and that's why I feel they need me, and they're so appreciative.
These aren't such little ponds. They're good-sized ponds.
Well, I don't know. But they're you know, they're both not-for-profit developmental theaters, and
They both do wonderful stuff, is what I meant.
Thank
They
you.
really do.
Thank you,
And,
thank
and
you.
well, you go, Evita. I mean, we've been just talking. I mean,
this new production of Evita. I am just sorry that this is going to air after Evita is finished. It's only 5 weeks. All of
know.
our main stage productions are just 5 weeks, but this particular production is, I was just saying, I saw it last night again, and I cried. I mean, that's how, and nobody big, no famous names, but just a wonderful,
that
wonderful
cast is so superlative, and they're
I
all on
know.
the same page. They're all playing with the same energy. They've all come together. You can see how much enjoyment they have,
and
in what
so
they're
much
doing.
happening on that little tiny stage. The
It's phenomenal.
director and the choreographer, I mean, Marcos
Oh, he's-
Santana, who studied under Susan Stroman,
Oh,
who,
I didn't
by
know
the way,
that. That
Susan
I didn't
Stroman
know.
is being honored by the York this year at our gala, so
Oh.
very excited
We'll
about
have to
that.
make it.
Yeah.
Let's not talk too much about Evita.
Okay.
Only because it's going to air after.
Okay.
After our show probably will air afterwards, and let's talk about some of the things like you're doing right now. Smokey Joe's
Smokey
Cafe.
Joe's Cafe, which
I saw it.
You saw it. Isn't it fun?
Those guys are
Amazing.
as the kids say, dope.
They really are incredibly talented, and I loved that show 15 years ago.
Let's show a clip and then talk about
Oh,
it, okay?
good, good,
Let's
good.
go
Oh,
right to
let's
the
do
clip
that.
for
Oh,
Smokey
good.
Joe's Cafe.
Mhm.
Came to a party in the county jail. Prison band was there and never came to well. The band was jumping and the drum began to swing. You should have heard this knockdown jailbird sing. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the homestyle block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. But they did wrong, I know they are. 'Cause I can play this here guitar. And I won't quit till I'm a star on Broadway. W-O-M-A-N. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Oh,
Yay, Smokey!
I loved it. I can't wait to see it again.
Well, let me tell you how I got involved in it. I love the guys at 54 Below. They're the lead producers on it, Richard Frankel Productions. And about a year ago, they took me out to lunch, and it was just me and the four of them. And we're having lunch. I thought they wanted me to invest in one of their projects, like the Parisian Woman, or one of those projects. But, you know, we're just having lunch, and I finally go, is there something in particular you guys want to talk about? And they said, tell us about Cagney. How did you do it? And because they were on the brink of deciding whether they were going to do Smokey Joe's on Broadway again for a capitalization of $8 million or bring it off Broadway. And off Broadway is traditionally difficult. So I told them, I said, you've got to have a great product and you need to advertise it as if it's a Broadway show. So that now I understood. Then I finally understood what it was they were talking about, because back then, who knew? So when I found out that Smokey Joe's Cafe, a show that I loved 15 years ago, that ran, by the way, for 5 years on Broadway. Had a 5-year run.
I enjoyed this more than the original.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
What? You?
A lot of people say the same thing. And this is choreographed and directed by Josh Burgas. Josh Burgas was my choreographer on Cagney. So I said, my God, this is meant to be. But this is his directorial debut, and he, I think, has done a spectacular job. It is so creative and so artistically different. Very exciting. So I loved that, and then I loved the financial. I loved the budget aspect of it. I'm not allowed to talk about how much it costs. Maybe I am. I don't know. Can I talk about that? I mean,
I don't
instead
know.
of, well, let me just give you a rough idea. Instead of being $8 million.
Sweetheart, go to this
Oh,
camera.
this camera. I'm talking the wrong camera.
Yeah, you are. That's your camera if you want to talk directly to the
Which
viewer.
camera is it?
This one right
This
here.
guy here with all the colors?
Uh-huh.
Instead of being $8 million on Broadway, it was less than 3 off Broadway. And at a theater that I happen to love, which I think is the best off-Broadway, or not the best, but it's a very good off-Broadway house. It used to be called the Little Schubert, and it's now called Stage 42.
It's so pretty, too.
It's so pretty, and it holds 499 seats, which just makes it off-Broadway. If it had 500 seats, it would be a Broadway house.
Oh, wow.
That's the
perfect.
difference. People think that a Broadway house is Broadway because it's on Broadway. It's nothing to do with that. I mean, like all the Lincoln Center theaters are Broadway, but they're you know, if they're
Right.
over 500 seats,
uh-huh.
that means they are a Broadway theater. If they're under 500, they're automatically off Broadway. So I love the theater. I loved that it was Josh. I loved the show, and I loved the guys that are the lead producers. I decided I have to become a co-producer on this, and that is a very big commitment. It's a lot more than just an investment. You're involved in decision making, you're involved in the advertising and the PR, you're involved in a lot of the marketing decisions, which is what I love.
And a co-producer puts up a lot more money, right?
Oh yeah, oh well, because you put in more, you put in more, and you get more back. Hopefully, that's what happens. But Smokey Joe's is really, it's a great production, and it's very, it's all song and dance, and it just
And nonstop. How many numbers? 32?
Nonstop, no intermission, 90 minutes, which people love today. Give me a 90-minute, no intermission. Fantastic, and it's just fun. It's fun.
How many songs? 32 was it? It's over 30 songs, right?
It's over 30.
It's dynamite.
It's dynamite.
But so because you were the lead producer, because what we want to talk about is the difference between just being a regular producer that gives money and being a lead producer, and like you are on Smokey Joe's, a co-producer, which also gives you input. So we wanted to talk about now your Cagney.
Cagney is my show. I own the rights. I own the rights to the show, and what we're doing with it now is.
Do we want to show them Cagney now? Let's show them a clip so they know.
Yeah,
what
sure.
Show
Cagney. Yeah, listen, I could watch Cagney all day long.
Well, we have the montage is what we have, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All right,
Let's do it.
So this is their off-Broadway show, Cagney, which Riki did. It started at the York, then it
started at the York, and then it went to the West Side Theater, and it ran for a very healthy 15 months, which is amazing,
extraordinary,
for Off-Broadway.
Yes.
And it's because it's a big show. I mean, it's a show. It's not that it has a great big cast, but it's a big musical that has a lot of singing and dancing.
And then you took it to California for a brief run.
And then we went to L.A., and that's a whole other story about my new partner in crime, Katie Edelman Johnson, whose father wrote and produced 14 Cagney movies, including White Heat. And Cagney was like a godfather to her. She lives in L.A., and she put a gun to my head, and she said, "You're going to bring this to L.A. You have to bring this to L.A." And so we did, and it was a huge hit and got tremendous reviews. And now what we're working on is developing it for the Broadway stage. I'll tell you about that later. Let's watch the clip.
Let's watch the clip. You hear her, lady.
Making a big splash on Broadway right now. Cagney, James Cagney.
Yankee Doodle do or die, a real life nephew of my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. I got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart, he's my Yankee Doodle toy. Yankee Doodle came to London just to ride the ponies. I am that Yankee Doodle boy.
Warner here, make me happy.
Ladies, gents,
Love it.
He's wonderful.
Love it,
He
love
really
it,
is.
love it.
Now, Robert Creighton, your star, wrote this. Is that
Well, he started the ball rolling. His acting teacher told him many years ago, you know, you remind me of Jimmy Cagney. And he started to write a one-man show, and then he brought in Christopher and Peter Colley and all these other people, and it evolved. It evolved. But Bobby had a lot to do with the script.
I mean, he's the spitting image of
He
Cagney.
is, he
and
is.
Everything about him, he has an essence and a movements and all kinds of things when you meet him. It's like, I always think no one else could possibly do this.
Yeah,
That's when I see it.
Well, that's not true.
I know you
because,
told me
know,
that
we
once
had-
before.
We had an understudy who everybody raved and they loved him. It was a kind of a different interpretation.
Right, it's going to be.
But he was great. I agree with you, though. I mean, Bobby is the perfect Cagney. He's the perfect Cagney.
Did I tell you my father loved Cagney? That was his favorite movie star, and so I've seen all of his movies.
Yeah.
So I'm really well known. So now, we have about 10 minutes or
Okay.
so. So where are you at now with Cagney? What's happening? Let's educate the people on how this process to take it to Broadway changes and what
Right,
you have to do
right.
different.
Okay, so it started at the York, and then I obtained the rights to it, which was not an easy process, trust me. I mean, that took about 6 months. But once I got the rights, then we brought it to the West Side Theater. We had a great run, wonderful reviews, and then Bobby was offered a role in Frozen. And that's Disney, and
Right.
that
It's a lot
really
of money.
pays big money, and he gets points and everything else, and he's got 2 little kids, and it was, anyway, so we closed the show, but we did have a small window between October and December of last year, and we brought it to LA. And I got to tell you, it was a wonderful experience, and that's because my friend Katie Edelman-Johnson insisted that we bring it to LA, because we know that we want to bring it to Broadway. So what we're doing is we're getting investors. You know, we're getting people excited about it. We're
Right.
getting people
You're building
familiar with
interest,
it.
too.
We're building. So now what we have to do is wait for him to finish, which is in May, and then
Is that his contract, or is the show over in May?
well, no, the show's not over, but he'll, you know, he may stay in it like until June or July or something. But what we're doing right now is talking to 5 different developmental theaters around the country, because the next step is to bring it to a theater such as La Jolla or the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle. We're talking to a particular theater in Dallas. I don't remember the name of it. We're working with Gary McAvey from Columbia Artists, and
wow.
he's terrific. And what we're planning to do is in the fall of 2019, bring it to one of these developmental theaters where and the difference is that they, first of all, they have the facility to build props and costumes, and you know they physically have another good one, by the way, is the Algonquin in Maine, which is where Smokey Joe's was developed for Broadway. So there are certain theaters around the country that are perfect for developing for the Broadway stage. And we're talking to 5 of them. One is in Cleveland, one is in Atlanta, one is in Dallas, one is in Seattle. I don't want to go back to California because we've done California. So, I mean, later, after the show, once the show does a road tour. But we're talking to these theaters, and we're going to figure out which one really wants us the most and where we're going to get the best deal, the best exposure. There are a lot of factors to consider. And
It's fascinating.
I'm working with my general manager from Briar Patch Productions, Laura Cronin, who I love, and working with Gary. And then, you know, once we have a contract with a developmental out-of-town theater, then we start really intensely working on the creative aspect of it with Bill Costolino, who was on your show a few weeks ago.
Oh, yes, yes.
And he's our director. And Josh Burgess. I mean, but you know, once we know we have the contract and we have a date when we're going to get started, then we can start. I mean, we've already had a few creative meetings to get the ball rolling with the new, and I have some fabulous ideas also for the, you know, how, for example, I want to do a lot with projections. I think projections.
Well, yeah, everyone's doing it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But there are a lot of creative ways to do
Yes.
it, and it's exciting and it's fun.
It's a wave. It's a real wave of
Yeah.
the future, and there's
So,
so much you
I
can bring
agree.
into it.
I
It's-
agree.
So I think it's a really smart idea as well.
So that's, and then the goal, the ultimate goal, is to open on Broadway in the second half of November in 2019. In other words, bring it right from the developmental to Broadway. And then once we're up and running on Broadway, and hopefully it's a big success, after that, then you want to do your road tour. You don't want to do your road tour prior to your Broadway run, because once a show is on Broadway, and especially if it's a hit, but sometimes even when it's not a hit, you can bring it all over the country, and many of these regional theaters they're pre-sold, because if people want to go to theater, they don't have as many choices as they have in New York City. So they'll go to the theater that's in there, and they have, you know, subscriptions, and they're regulars.
Right.
So these theaters are great, and it's not a question of will you make money, it's a question of how much when you do your road tour.
Of whatever it take you, yeah, of how popular your show will be, is what you're saying, right?
You always make money.
So it
Even
depends on how
shows-
popular, in other words.
Well,
to make.
it's a question of how much,
Yeah.
but you're always going to sell tickets out of town
Mm-hmm.
because there's a love for live theater,
But they don't get
and
to
there's a
see it.
need for it.
Right.
And they don't have the opportunity. I mean, we're so spoiled living in New York. My God, we have so many choices.
You remind me of how spoiled we are. I forget it. You keep giving me little nudges. You even mentioned it today.
That's right.
So we're lucky. So are we jaded? I don't think so. Not yet.
Well, you get to see everything.
So do you, though.
I do. I don't see everything, not like I don't get to see all of the off-Broadway, but I
Wait,
try to
do
get
you
to
want to
see.
see everything?
No. I don't want to see everything, but I do want to see a lot because I like to have an opinion, even if I don't like it. I am so immersed in the world of theater, and if you were to ask me, what do I love most about being a theatrical producer, I have to say it's the people, it's the ambiance, it's the world. I mean, to think that I had another career so recently, and at my stage, and I'm no spring chicken, let me tell you,
Oh.
to move into a brand new
You look like a
life
spring
and
chicken to
brand new
me.
world. I'm telling you, it's like it's embraced me, and it's a wonderful feeling, especially after losing my husband recently, and it just was a transition that I kind of fell into, and it felt right, and I'm thrilled to be part of the world of theater in New York.
The world of the theater in New York is a real family.
It's a family.
It really is.
Exactly.
And when you do it well, you're embraced because they like to embrace gifted, talented people.
They do, and
And they encourage you to go further.
and it's yeah, absolutely, and it's fun. I'm also a very active member of the Friars Club. And when you walk into the Friars Club, it's all people who are involved in the world of theater and entertainment. And it's a great feeling to walk in and, oh my God, I saw Cagney, it was great, I loved it. Yeah, the producer of Cagney. You know, really, you feel good from that. You do.
Well, you're elevating people's spirits too, is what you're doing, and you're also laying out there like a template for people's dreams.
And it makes me feel so good when an audience says to me, I love your show. Oh my God, it was so wonderful. I saw it 3 times. I mean, I say to myself, wow, it's because of me. I made this happen, that people are so happy and having such a great time. I mean, this means a lot.
God bless you. I'm so glad you reinvented yourself and you brought yourself as a theater producer, because you're doing wonderful things for the theater community. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank
We're
you,
just
Patrick.
about out of time. We have about 30 seconds left. Is there anything else we want to say to the audience before we...
I want to say, see Smokey Joe's.
Oh,
And I want to say, wait for Cagney. You're in for a treat.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
It's
Patrick.
my pleasure having... Oh, you know, I was going to tell people about your necklace over here. She's got this incredible necklace. These are piano
wires.
cords.
Piano wires.
Aren't they? Isn't that
It-
cool?
and it was very
Can you zoom
inexpensive.
in on it real quick on the last 4 seconds?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Piano wire. Isn't that
We're
pretty?
gone.
Okay.